Alright, so we have that notch already done, and I'll show you how it fits up. It's a little tricky to see with how I got the camera set up, but there's our notch, nice and clean. Is try and hit as many things as possible with the tube, make as much noise. Alright, so kind of get it set in there about how it's going to be, about like so. So you'll notice that the end down here isn't in the middle of the mounting plate. What we're going to do is I'm going to take about a 1/4 inch off of that end, and then we'll see where it sits. And we're just going to do that until we get it to sit pretty good. Alrighty, so we're back, and we took about a 1/4 inch off of the end of that tube. Now, what we're going to do is, because there's a discrepancy between the angle that this sits at and the angle of this mounting plate by about 5 degrees, it's not going to sit perfectly flush unless we cope that end. So, sorry, not cope, but to bevel that end that mounts to the mounting plate. I already removed a 1/4 inch of material, and already what I was basically looking for was I wanted to make sure that this tube was going to be sitting in the middle of the mounting plate height-wise, right? I didn't want it to be too long and sitting down here. I didn't want it to be too short and sitting way up here. I wanted it to sit almost perfectly right. I wanted to make sure that all we had to do is just remove a little bit of material to get that angle correct and not have to cut a whole entire new end to it, okay? Now that we have that done, we're gonna go ahead and line up the notch correctly in line with the side hoop, and then we're gonna make a mark where this tube touches the mounting plate. We're gonna make sure it's centered, and then we're gonna go ahead and mark with a straight line where this tube hits, okay? Now we know, you can see that right there. Alright, see a little line? It's kind of hard to see because this tube isn't cleaned off yet, but that's what we call a center line. Now what that means is that when this tube is lined up with the notch correctly against the main hoop, this is the exact center that is going to be hitting this mounting plate. Alright folks, so here's the end product. We have our tube directly in line with the side hoop, and just like that, perfectly flush to the mounting plate. Just what we're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and clean this tube up. All we're going to do is hit it with some Scotch-Brite and some acetone. Knock the mill scale off, and we'll go ahead and weld it as much as we can. You're going to see how I am going to drop this roll cage to get to the tops to weld, because when you have really tight fitment, you can't get to all the joints to weld them. You have to drop the cage. There's a couple options. I prefer to do rocker boxes. It's cleaner, and I think it's nicer than drilling a hole through the floor pan of a vehicle to physically drop the roll cage. So next up, that's what we're gonna do. Alright, so after you saw me drop the cage on that time lapse, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through kind of what I did. So I use a ratchet strap, and I don't put the dash bar in until after the cage is all done.
This allows me to pull the forward legs or the side hoops in so that I can drop the cage and manipulate it to drop it off the rear shelf here. It's very important that you leave yourself enough room to be able to tilt the cage down to clear the roof line, and that way you can drop the front of the cage and then slide the whole thing right off the shelves back there. Once you do that, you'll be able to come around and weld the tops of the cage. It's kind of hard to see up in there, but you'll be able to weld the tops of the cage, make sure there's nice welds, clean all the way around, wire wheel them off, and then you are set to reposition the cage back up.